Thank you for having me. My name is Pooja Makhijani, as Rick said, and I am a writer and a home baker based in New Jersey. Um, I I have two really fun things to share with you today. One is a piece of my writing because you're probably not as familiar with it. I do a lot of food writing, and I'm going to share a piece tonight that was actually tweeted by the Skokie Library earlier this afternoon, and it was about summer road trips with my parents when we were younger. I thought it might be fun to think of the days where we might be outside again. And have lots of road trips this summer. And then I'm going to demonstrate a super easy weeknight, do it with your kids, sandwich cookie recipe, which will be on the Skokie Library website tomorrow morning. So without further ado, I'm going to read a piece just so you have an introduction to my work. This was on the website The Kitchen, KITCHN if you're not familiar, and it was published 2 summers ago. Somewhere along Interstate 95 in the middle of Virginia, the pun-laden signs began. I sat shotgun alongside my father in our Dodge Caravan. It was the summer of 1989, and 9 of us, including my father's sister and her family, and a cousin on my mother's side, all visiting from India, were en route from central New Jersey to Orlando, Florida. This was our family's first trip to states south of Washington, D.C. My father and I spotted billboards with curious taglines every few miles. You never sausage a place. You're always a wiener at Pedro's. Or chili today, hot tamale. Nearly all of them were unabashedly racist, although as a fairly sheltered then 11-year-old, I didn't recognize them as such until I was much older and reflected back on our journey. We passed the miles anticipating our arrival at south of the border, the enigmatic place these signs were touting. Finally, in Dillon, South Carolina, we pulled into an empty parking lot and into the shade of a garish water tower-shaped statue of Pedro, the mascot of this faux Mexican meets Dixie rest stop. 9 of us tumbled out of the minivan, stretching limbs that had been contorted to accommodate us all. I was starving, but we were not here to eat south of the border's Tex-Mex cuisine or diner fare, as many of our fellow road warriors were. My mother had already sprung open the trunk and set out an array of Tupperware containers and repurposed yogurt tubs on a nearby picnic table. I remember with extraordinary specificity the food she packed. Crustless sandwiches made of buttered white toast, sliced juicy tomatoes, Kraft singles, and her fiery mint cilantro chutney. Pakarwadi, a savory, deep-fried pastry filled with spicy and tangy poppy seed-based spice blend, and Doritos. We washed down our lunch with warm cans of Coke and sat back on our way. I wanted to buy a kitschy tchotchke or soft-serve cone for the ride, but there was no time or money or need for that. My memories of summer travel are forever associated with my mother's hodgepodge of picnic foods. As immigrants with limited means, we traveled North America long before couch surfing and shared economy had been coined. I saw most of the country east of the Mississippi River and eastern Canada on the road. Precious travel dollars were hoarded for once in 5-year trips to India. We crashed with family, friends, or family of friends along the way. A great uncle here, my mother's cousin's brother-in-law there. We ate fenugreek spiced matri, doughy crackers made with semolina flour, maida, and ghee, alongside a tangy mango achar that seared our tongues in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. In the marina, before embarking on the ferry from Sandusky, Ohio to Kelly Island, we had bhoga chawra, a caramelized onion pilaf that's seasoned with cinnamon, cloves, black cardamom, and bay leaves. And at a rest stop on I-87 in Champlain, New York, awaiting the border crossing, we snacked on granola bars and crumbly besan laddu full of sugar, ghee, and cardamom powder. Despite the fact that my family's fortunes have changed dramatically since the late 1980s, hauling food on our road trips continues to be part habit, part tradition. Earlier this year, on a Memorial Day weekend trip to Lake Placid, a town we visit almost annually since 1994, I helped my mother to arrange boxes of chevra, a spicy Gujarati snack mix with fried lentils and sultanas sourced from a nearby temple, homemade oatmeal puris for my daughter, and bags of flaxseed fleck tortilla chips, the Doritos having been substituted with Trader Joe's packaged snacks into the back of our car. There are restaurants along the way, I remind her. Even found back to the house to pick up fruit, spiced cashews, and mithai. Although I tease her about her frugality and her disdain of pizza and burgers, our road trips and our consumption of Americana and our family's assimilation just wouldn't be the same without our traditional foods at cookie cutter rest stops and American vacation spots. On our way upstate, we stopped once on the 6-hour drive to eat a spot of rice and dal at my mother's childhood friend's home outside Albany. We arrived in Adirondack National Park, having consumed much of our bounty, passing snacks from hand to hand. And while the village of Lake Placid has changed dramatically since the 1990s, my favorite bookstore has closed, and a Starbucks has popped up across the street on a grassy patch on the banks of Mirror Lake to eat. My daughter asked for a cup of chocolate ice cream from the Ben & Jerry's down the street. I smile, shake my head no, and give her a mandarin orange and a bag full of dates and a few Trader Joe's quinoa and black tortilla chips that survived our trip. So that was just a sampling of some writing. A lot of my writing focuses on food. I write a lot of food essays. I also write a lot of recipes. And more recently, I've been doing a lot of cooking demos since we're all at home. And this is where I want to show you a really, really fun, super easy, do it in one evening kind of cookie recipe. So I'm just going to adjust my laptop a little bit. I'm going to be using a stand mixer tonight, but you can do this by hand as well. So let's see. We can do this. Okay. I will talk my way through it. All right. So I have my stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment. And in it goes butter. So we're going to cream the butter and sugar first. In go 3 ingredients at this point. One is sugar, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of baking powder. And I'm putting on the stand mixer so much that the butter and the sugar become smooth and creamy. Probably take 2 to 3 minutes on sort of medium speed. Once the butter has started creaming, I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. And then I'm going to alternate adding all-purpose flour and a little bit of milk. Add half the flour and half the milk. And once that starts coming together, I'm going to add the other half of the flour and the other half of the milk. me a minute to scrape down the sides of my stand mixer. I'm just going to mix it until it comes together as a dough. You'll notice that this cookie recipe doesn't use eggs, which is really helpful because it's nice to have recipes in one's repertoire that remove common allergens. At least that's what I found. This has come together. That's my work surface. And for most cookie doughs, for those of you who are familiar with baking, a lot of them have to be chilled. Well, this dough doesn't have to be chilled, which is why it makes it a really easy, like I said, super easy weeknight, my kids are bored, what should we do sort of project. So I'm taking the dough, as you can see, and this dough doesn't have to be chilled, so I'm putting it directly on a floured surface. Just move some stuff out of the way. In the meantime, I am preheating my oven to 350 as well. I'm going to roll this out to about 1/8 of an inch or so. It's a really easy dough to work with. It's not sticky at all. Despite having so much butter in it, like I said, it doesn't require to be chilled. Like I said, super easy, super pliable, super quick, and only 6 ingredients. Assembled a baking sheet with a sheet of parchment paper on top. I'm using really fun heart cookie cutters tonight. And just setting them on the parchment paper. Taking all my scraps, being generous with flour on my work surface. Again, like I said, about 1/8 of an inch thick. sort of at the stage in my baking life that I can kind of know when this is about 1/8 of an inch. My oven is still preheating. Another thing that's really cool about this dough in particular, and I'll share with you the finished product shortly, is that it doesn't spread much. Again, for those of you who are familiar with baking, there are certain types of cookies that spread out a lot, and so they look very different from what you may have put on your cookie sheet. What makes these cookies are very crisp and they hold their shape. So it's really fun and easy to use a cookie cutter that has a lot of detail because it won't spread out or smudge the edges as much. So I really love this cookie dough for projects that require that kind of precision. So another thing, because these cookies don't spread, I can fit a lot on a sheet. And that's what I'm choosing to do here as well. I know that these won't spread and sort of run into each other. Again, for those of you who are familiar with baking, that's something one has to consider. But like I said, with these cookies, they don't spread much. So you can pop a lot in the oven and don't have to use so many baking sheets either. So as soon as the oven is preheated, these are gonna go in. Whoops. They're gonna go in for about 16 minutes or until the edges are light brown. And because I sort of prepared a half batch before this, I have cookies that are cool and out of the oven that I can show you, so you don't have to wait 16 minutes for these to come out in particular. So these are the cookies that came out of the oven a little bit earlier. As you can see, and I'll sort of lift them and show you, the edges are just brown. And the back side of the cookie looks like this. So just light brown. Because of the night that we're making sandwich cookies, I've sort of stacked them in tubes, as you can see. So if you do make these cookies specifically, you would want to do them in multiples of 2. Or if you don't, you can just eat the extras. The other thing I prepared earlier this evening was just, I poured a bunch of blackberry jam into a piping bag. If you don't have a piping bag, of course, you can use a plastic bag and just pour it into one of the corners and then clip off the point. I'm using jam tonight because I thought, again, I wanted to use ingredients that were really readily available and stuff that people possibly already had at home. And you can use any jam to fill these. You can also use buttercream, which is a basic mixture of butter and powdered sugar and a little bit of vanilla. Or you could use ganache. These cookies are really flexible depending on your tastes and preferences. So all I'm going to do is put a little bit of jam on the inside, just pipe it in. And voila, it's that easy. And I sort of, like I said, cut out the 16 minutes that it's going to take for us to, and I'm going to put the batch that obviously we cut out this evening into the oven. But it's probably that's all it'll take you. The time that we've had till now for me to demonstrate these various steps, plus another 16 minutes in the oven. So it's like super easy, super quick, super fun. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and put this tray in the oven. I guess oh wait, I think there's some questions coming in. Yeah, I guess maybe open it up to questions, whether about the baking, or we can go back to the writing, or you can ask me how those two things really fit in with each other. Baking is a really huge part of my writing process. I find that when I'm stuck, when I have quote unquote writer's block, I end up in the kitchen, and I find that it's really inspirational. It clears my head in a way that allows like different connections to be formed. It calms the mind. It exercises the mind in a different way, and it both the writing and the cooking, sorry for the pun, they sort of feed each other.
I wanted to ask a quick question. How has being in semi-quarantine or sheltering in place affected the way that you bake and or write? How do they feed each other?
With baking, I'm more likely to bake bread at home because it's very functional. Like we go through it, as opposed to these cookies, which are really fun to make in the evening, but I don't want to be making cookies every night. So I think I'm making less sweet things, or less things that are impractical. And we're doing a lot of like basic bread and pizza on the weekends and stuff that is kind of necessary to feed a family. So that, I think, is the sort of very immediate way that my baking and cooking practice has changed. But I still think it's still a big part of my writing, process. Yeah.
If anyone else has questions, feel free to, should be a hand to raise down at the bottom corner, and we can call on you there, or there's, we're kind of in a position here too where you can unmute and ask a question as well. The chat is also available. So after this event, just so you guys know, we're going to have a copy of the recipe posted to our website within 24 hours. And don't forget, we are recording this, so if you need the visual demonstration, we'll have that available too.
I want to stress for those of you who aren't bakers, it is because I eliminate the time that dough usually is chilled, right? It's the easiest recipe to get cookies on the table as fast as possible. And I think everyone likes that.
What are you working on in terms of writing right now?
I am working on, in terms of my creative work, I'm working actually on what I think is going to be sort of a middle grade novel. And it features a mom who's a baker. There's definitely a baking through line throughout. And so speaking of the way that the writing and the baking intersect in that particular case, in that particular writing project, is a plot point. So it actually helps. It's research, right, for the book. So in that way, it's working in a slightly different way for that project.
I have a question from Lauren in the chat. She's asking, what kind of bread do you bake? And I've been thinking of trying baking bread.
Lauren, I make all kinds of bread. Bread was the thing that first brought me to baking several years ago, in fact. And so it's the thing that it's like my first love, so I keep returning to it. I think most recently, I have been making a lot of sourdough. I know that's really cliched because everyone who's in quarantine apparently has a starter and is making sourdough. But I have been baking a lot of sourdough lately. I had a starter from a long time ago. I didn't create a starter during this quarantine. But I love, I think my favorite thing to make in terms of bread is like really fun. Like I love making croissants, like really sort of super involved bread projects. But everything in between, from sourdough to pastry to just sandwich bread that we use every day. I find a lot of bread baking is part art, part science. Yeast is alive. It feels it's like a whole process, and there's a whole world of bread bakers out there, and people are really into baking bread and talking about yeast, and it's really kind of dorky and fun. Do you have any other questions, Lauren, specific, like if there are recipes you want to try or something?
Well, I was thinking about trying bread, but like I don't have a starter or anything like that.
Do you have yeast at home?
Yeah.
So you can always start with something simple like a yeasted bread. One of my favorite websites for bread baking is the King Arthur Flour website, just because I think that they test their recipes really well. And there's some really elementary bread baking breads on there, just basic sandwich breads. And I think that's a great place to start if you have yeast at home.
Great. Yeah, I'll look at the King Arthur Flour then. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Is there a way to do a starter for bread without yeast?
Well, yes. So to do a starter, all you need is flour and water. And then you basically are letting the flour and water gather wild yeast that exists in our space, in our kitchens. And then over a period of 7 to 10 days, it will start bubbling, right? You'll have caught enough wild yeast that you're feeding it, and it'll be breathing. It'll be this like living creature. So it is possible. The only reason I'm not advising people to start a starter now is because the initial outlay of flour during that 7 to 10 day period is a lot. You're discarding a lot of flour. And I know it's been really hard for people to source flour at this time. So I think now, while we're kind of still having trouble sourcing some of these ingredients because the supply chain has not fully corrected, I think the best place is to go to a local bakery and ask for a starter, because I know a lot of them are doing that. Or if you have a friend who has a starter, because once you have the bacteria in hand, to build from there, it doesn't require as much flour. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I didn't know you could do that, so that's fantastic. Also, thanks for the hookup on asking a bakery for a starter. I would have never thought about that, because we can't find yeast around here at all.
That's what I figured. So I actually got that tip from a friend who lives up in the Hudson Valley, upstate New York, and she said that one of the bakeries that they had visited, the bakery has shut down, obviously, although they're doing delivery, but they were the one who started selling starter, and people were buying it in droves because yeast was so hard to find.
Yes, yeah, it definitely is. Thank you very much.
I'm just continuing to cut from the scraps of cookie.
Do you think those would hold up well if you did ice cream sandwiches?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
They're the type of cookie. I'm sure I'll have an extra, so I'm just gonna show you one that I baked earlier today, and I'm just gonna break it in half. It has this
okay.
snap to it, and you can see it's like a good ice cream cookie. And I think this is the kind of cookie that if you added cocoa to it, it would make a good chocolate cookie as well.
Ooh, good call. Thank you.
So add a little bit of cocoa and a little bit more milk. And
Okay.
that will, because the cocoa is a dry ingredient, so you would add a little bit of milk to offset the dryness of the cocoa.
And you think substituting for like gluten-free and dairy-free, it's all gonna kind of switch over easy?
Yes. And it doesn't require eggs, so that eliminates one thing you don't have to worry about if you're trying to veganize it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. These cookies, once you see the recipe tomorrow, you'll see they have a strong vanilla flavor. They're quite vanilla-y. So, it's also a matter of taste. You can always reduce the vanilla once you all look at the recipe tomorrow. I use a whole tablespoon of vanilla in this big batch of cookies, which is quite a bit. I guess one of the last things I want to say is that I do post a lot of my bakes on social media. My account is at Labor of Loaf, LABOROFLOAF, so Labor of Loaf, not Labor of Love. It's a private account, but if you just request me, now that I can see all your names, I will definitely, I can let you in if any of you are on social media.
I also wanted to just let folks know that Pooja has a website too, where many of her recipes and her writings are gathered, and I will post that in the chat in just a moment.
And Mimosa, if you want to post a link to the Instagram as well, so it's available to them, it's fine as well.
Thanks for posting that, Mimosa. They're both available in the chat now, that website and the Instagram handle.
We have another question.
Mm-hmm. The leavening agent, Mayuri, in this one is baking powder. And the ingredient, I guess, if anyone's really interested in baking chemistry, the ingredient that gives it the little snap is adding the milk. If I didn't add the milk, it would have a more shortbread-like quality. So shortbread, if you are familiar, is slightly crumbly and a little softer. But adding the milk to this recipe, even though it's a small quantity, gives it that snap that I demonstrated earlier. I'm just re-rolling and re-rolling scraps, trying not to waste them.
Do you recommend staying with that smaller size cookie cutter that you used, or do you think you could go up some? You just wouldn't have as much to work with?
Yes, I think you could absolutely go bigger or smaller. It would just, you would have to adjust your time in the oven. So for this cookie cutter, which you can see is smaller than the palm of my hand, which is probably 2 inches by 1.5 inches, or rough, give or take, I sort of figured it out at between 15 and 16 minutes at 350. Obviously, if you're going to use something bigger, you might have to go longer, and something smaller, you might have to go shorter, but that's a bit of trial and error on your part.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So my batch of cookies is almost out of the oven. Like I said, and I'll show you as soon as these come out, I'm looking for a really pale brown on the tops, and the edges should just be slightly brown. You don't want it to go any more than that because you'll burn the cookies. While we're waiting for that to come out, I'm just going to demonstrate again. Like I said, I'm putting jam in these. Obviously, you can do anything you like. Any jam or marmalade that you have at home. Buttercream, if that's what you like. Ganache, or just chocolate. Like I said, they're really versatile. That's it.
We have a question. Is your book available in digital format or only print for libraries?
So my first 2 books are available in print. Just give me 1 second, Rick. I just got to pull this out of the oven.
Yeah, we're here.
Put my last tray in. So those are available in print, but I have currently out, I sort of released it last year. I have a really short mini ebook available. It's called Labor of Loaf. It's available on my website, and for a donation of any amount, you can download it, and it has 10 recipes in it, 2 for donuts, 1 for bread, and 5 for cookies and bars, and 1 for tamarind caramel. So that's a little bit of an extra. It's available for a donation of any amount from 25 cents if that's what you want, and all 100% of proceeds go to the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. So that's available on my website. If you go to poojamakijani.com/labor of loaf, and Mimosa, if you want to just throw that in the chat as well. Like I said, you can. I have a bunch of recipes in this sort of mini ebook that I did for charity just at the end of 2019. So this is the tray I just pulled out of the oven. I'm gonna let them sit on the tray to cool. But if you see, you can see they're really pale still, but the edges have a slight brownness to them, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Anything more than that, they'll basically taste burnt. Anything less than that, and they won't taste cooked. It's a very fine balance, I realize that, but this is the appearance that you're looking for. Yeah, I think I don't really have much more to say. If you guys, I'm really thankful for you joining me on a weeknight evening. I know that's not always easy. And I hope you'll give this recipe a try. It's super easy. It's super satisfying. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Rick, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Continue. Go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you so much for taking time this evening to share with us your story, to read aloud your article in the kitchen, your essay rather, and to also demonstrate this recipe. It looks delicious, and I'll have to try it. I thank all of you as well at home for joining us this evening. It's really not the same being at our homes versus the library, but we hope to reopen sometime soon, and we hope that in the meantime you can continue to access our resources both through our website as well as events that we host similar to this. We are here for you, and we are looking forward to rejoining you at the library soon enough. But in the meantime, we hope that you are all safe and well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Don't
Thank
forget
you.
to check our website for more events. We're adding them all the time.